Here. My name is Carol Walters. I am the Assistant Scoutmaster for Troop 2019 in San Jose. And my course tonight is First Aid for Cub Scouts, a Leader's Guide. My goal with this course is to help you understand a little bit more about first aid and how to teach this somewhat daunting topic to your Cub Scouts. Okay. There are 4 objectives that I'd like to accomplish with this course. Number 1, what is first aid? Number 2, to try to help you create first aid kits for your Cub Scouts, and also how to create first aid kits for your pack. Number 3, I'd like to help you give you some tips on how to teach first aid for your Cub Scouts. And number 4, basically what our responsibilities are as leaders when it comes to first aid. So what is first aid? First aid is the basic medical care given to someone who is injured or in a medical emergency. You may have to conduct CPR, which is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. There are 5 main objectives to first aid. Number 1 is to preserve life. Number 2 is to prevent further injury. Number 3 is to promote recovery. Number 4 is to relieve pain. And the last one is to protect the victim or the patient. First aid kits can be very complicated or they can be very simple. If I were a Cub Master or a den leader, I would start by creating personal first aid kits that were very simple, and you can be very creative in the ways that you create these little kits for your Cub Scouts. As Cub Scouts move up in rank, you should add new items to their little kits, and you should also make sure to check for any expired items. The personal first aid kits should be part of their 10 essentials. In my opinion, first aid should be taught throughout Cub Scouts because it should be an ongoing topic that you revisit as they age in their scouting career. Now, these are examples of some very simple, very creative ways to create little personal first aid kits. You can use little Altoid boxes. You can use little soap boxes to create little first aid kits. And you can put them, you can put little Band-Aids or just the basic items that kids may need when they're outdoors or when they're just at meetings. And again, you should reevaluate the items that are in these first aid kits to check for any expiration dates, and also just to make sure that some of these items are still usable. A fun activity that I remember doing with my girls in Cub Scouts was creating these little first aid kit neckerchief slides. And all these are is just these empty film containers that you can fill with Band-Aids, antibiotic ointments, little gauze pads, and they're really fun for the kids to make, and they get these really cool neckerchief slides out of it. Now, every Cub Scout pack should have a first aid kit. If you don't have one, I suggest you make one. The reason being is that when we go into these meetings, these children are in our care, in the den meetings, the pack meetings, or pack outings. I know you've encountered some parents that just come by, drop their kids off and leave. And all of a sudden you're left with 15, 20 kids in your care. So you have to be prepared for anything that may happen. When you create your first aid kits, make sure that you check them and keep them up to date. Make sure that you check all the items in your kit for any expired items that may not be usable anymore. And I would appoint a leader, an adult leader, to maintain the first aid kit and make sure that you keep up to date on the medical forms that you're provided with, because you want to make sure that there aren't any major allergies that some of these children may have and that you're not aware of. Usually if a child has like the big allergies, like peanut allergies, parents are going to let you know. If kids need an EpiPen, they're going to come and let you know, but you don't want to be surprised. So you should make sure that someone is on top of those hidden allergies, or there's those little ailments that you just don't know about. So these are examples of first aid kits. You can certainly go out and buy a professionally made first aid kit, or you can make your own. I personally like to make my own because I know my scouts. I know what they need. I'm the ASM for a girl troop. And these are young ladies that are growing and their bodies are changing. So I usually have sanitary napkins in my first aid kit just to be prepared, because you just don't know if they've brought any items that they may need. I also have toothbrushes in there because some kids believe that brushing their teeth is optional on campouts. So you just want to be prepared for anything, right? The Scout motto is to be prepared. So this is a video on how to prepare first aid kits and the type of first aid kits that are out there. Some can be very simple and some can be very complicated. This is kind of the lengthy video. I'm not going to play the entire video. So I'm just going to play about 5 minutes of it, but they do a really good job of explaining of what the items are and why they're so useful. So here we go.
Large wound that you need to keep covered. 10 Scout essentials, so be prepared. And then lastly, for larger groups, you notice this one's a lot bigger and it's a little more extensive. It has some things in here that you're not going to need on a regular basis, but for large groups and especially high adventure and backcountry camping kits, this one's called the Backcountry Kit from Adventure Medicals. They have a great amount, a great selection to cater from the personal level all the way up to the large group and troop settings as well, and one for your home. It's always good to have one in the home as well. So if you don't have one, we're going to talk about some basic stuff that you need to have in your first aid kit. And here you see we have the contents of a standard first aid kit, and we're going to go through and explain a little bit about each one. So we'll start with the bottom here. An ABD pad, which is a giant 5-inch by 9-inch gauze pad. So if you have a large wound that you need to keep covered once you get it sterilized and cleaned out, the AB pad is a great source for that, as well as gauze sponges of different sizes. We have some here and we have some smaller ones here. Those are great to make sure that your wound gets dressed after you've cleaned it properly and applied your triple antibiotic ointment. Instant cold packs are very nice to have, especially for small sprains and things like that. You hit your head and you've got some swelling, you want to relieve the swelling a little bit. Instant cold pack works great for that. We talked about the importance of moleskin, of course, and moleskin is great for relieving blisters and helping keep your feet healthier when you're out hiking and everything. And then we have a couple of different styles of bandages, all the way up from just a standard style all the way down to the fingertip bandages. Those are very important, especially if you cut yourself, if you're whittling or something like that. It's a little bit more catered to the design of your.
Okay, so you get the idea. He goes through all the items that you may need within your first aid kit. And it's a good idea to be prepared for more than what you think, because you never know what to expect with little kids in particular. All right, I need to see, how do I move forward? Yeah, let's see, I guess I'm just gonna have to run through the whole video. Won't let me move forward.
Try to push the arrow, right arrow.
Yeah, I am trying to do that, and it's not doing it for some reason. Sorry, guys. Let's see if that doesn't. Nope. Nope, I'm stuck.
Push escape.
Starting it. It doesn't. See, escape. No.
Be right there.
Sorry. Nope. Okay, sorry about that. Can everyone hear me here? Okay, so I know you're wondering, how do we teach first aid to Cub Scouts? Well, number one, you have to make it fun, because if it's not fun, you're going to bore your scouts to death. You can create some fun and interactive games centered around the topic of first aid, and always keep the game simple and fun. A while back, I had to teach my scouts about the first aid requirements for tenderfoot. And I looked at this laundry list of injuries that I had to explain. And I thought, oh my giddy aunt, how in the world am I going to explain these topics to these kids and at the same time try to show them how to treat for these injuries? So in the back of my head, I kept thinking, Carol, it has to be fun, because if it's not fun, then I'm going to lose these scouts. They're going to get bored to death and they're just going to zone me out. So what I did was I grabbed a bunch of stuffed animals that my girls still had and never used. And I gave them some pretty bad injuries. As you can see, this poor kitty in the corner has an object impaled in the eye. This poor bunny here is being treated for shock. And a few others had some injuries. They were burn victims. And I showed them to my scouts and I said, these poor stuffed animals are suffering from some injuries. I need you to tell me how you would treat for these injuries. And they had a ball. They loved it. It was so much better than me standing up in front of them lecturing from the scout book. The point is that you have to stretch your imagination and think outside of the Zoom box. Basically, you have to, try to put yourself in your Cub Scouts shoes, because ask yourself, how would you like to learn first aid? Would you rather have fun or sit there and listen to someone lecture about first aid? So that was one activity that I did with my scouts. I also ran across something called 1-minute games, which I never knew about, but is actually a lot of fun. These are fun, simple, easy games that only last a minute. And at the end of these games, you should always have prizes for your kids, because kids love prizes. This video here is a short video, and it tells you about 1-minute games. You can tweak these games to be first aid centered. Some of them may not be COVID friendly right now, but you can adjust them to make them COVID friendly. And they're just really simple, easy games that you can use to basically create interactive games centered around the topic that you're teaching, okay?
7 always entertaining party games. Number 1, Sticker Stalker. Give everyone at the party the same sheet of stickers and tell them the rules. You must get rid of the whole sheet by sticking them to the other guests, one at a time, without them noticing. If someone catches you, they can stick one of their stickers on you. First one to empty their sticker sheet wins. Number 2, Who Am I? Pick one name, a celebrity or public figure, for each person playing, and write that name on a card stuck to the player's back or forehead. Each person gets to ask the other guests 20 yes or no questions to find out who they are. Number 3, Telephone Pictionary. Sit in a circle and give everyone a notepad and a pen. Have everyone write something down, anything at all, on the second sheet of their notepad and pass the close pad to the person on their right. Have everyone pick up their new pad, look at the words on page 2, and draw them as best they can on page 3. Keep passing and drawing and guessing until you have your original pad in front of you. Flip through the pages in front of the group for mega laughs as your phrase gets distorted, telephone style, through the drawings and guesses. Number 4, Bottle Blow. Shuffle a deck of cards into a loose and messy stack, then balance the stack carefully on top of a narrow bottle. Sit in a circle and let everyone take turns trying to blow just a card or two off the top of the deck. The person who blows the entire deck off the bottle loses. Number 5, Mail Call. Arrange chairs in a circle using one fewer chair than the number of players. Have someone start the game by standing in the center of the circle and saying, "Mail call for everyone who is wearing red," or has a cat, or whatever. Then everyone in a chair who has on red, or has a cat, or whatever, must get up and switch chairs with someone else wearing red, or has a cat, or whatever. The object of the game is for the person in the middle to get a chair before someone else can. Whoever is left standing delivers the next mail call. Number 6. Oranges. Divide guests into 2 or more teams. Have each team line up in a row and hand an orange to the person at the start of each line. The object is to pass the orange down to the end of the line using only your neck and chin. If a team drops the orange, pass it back by hand to the start and try again. First team to get the orange to the end of the line wins. Number 7. Likes and dislikes. Have everyone at the party write down some likes and dislikes on a sheet of paper. Collect the cards and have one person read them aloud, one at a time, while everyone else tries to guess who wrote what.
Okay, so you get the idea. Some of these games, like I said, are not COVID friendly right now, but you can tweak them to make them COVID friendly. And then of course, the idea is to center them around first aid topics. All of these games are really short, easy games that you don't have to put a whole lot of effort into. And because you're dealing with little kids with short attention spans, it'll keep them, active and having fun. And that way they can be basically tuned into what you're trying to teach them. Let's see if I can move forward. It won't let me move forward. Sorry, I'm gonna have to stop sharing and do this again.
7 always in.
Oh, yay, I got it to work. Okay, so this is another example of another game you can play. It's a cup stack game. See how fast the kids can stack a cup in a minute. And you can imagine you can put little first aid stickers on the cups and they can win a prize at the end of the game. Same thing here. You can tweak these games to be first aid related and try to get them to blow cups down with a balloon. And again, the prize at the end of the game could be a first aid related item. Whole thing is just to keep them having fun and, create little games that are centered around a first aid topic. So the first aid topic is so huge. There's so many things you could talk about, and it's a little overwhelming, especially for people who are not in healthcare and they don't know where to begin. So I chose 6 very common injuries that children may encounter. You don't have to talk about all of these injuries all at once because you're going to overwhelm your Cub Scouts. I would recommend choosing one topic and discuss it one week and then choose another topic and discuss it the next week, or you can do a whole month of cuts and scrapes or bites and stings. But I will go over just a brief description of each of these topics and try to give you some ideas of how to present these topics to your Cub Scouts. So the first one is cuts and scrapes. A cut is a damage to the skin surface and the deeper layers of the skin and muscle. Scrapes are basically damages to the surface layer of the skin that don't penetrate the deeper layers of your skin. How to treat for cuts and scrapes? Well, first you wash your hands. You need to stop the bleeding. Small cuts and scrapes stop bleeding on their own, and deeper cuts may require a little bit more pressure. You wash the wound with a little bit of water and maybe soap if it's really, really dirty. Apply antibiotic ointment, apply a thin layer on the surface of the wound site, and then apply a dressing or a Band-Aid and change it as needed. And you have to make sure that your scout has had their tetanus shot within the last 10 years. So one game that you can play is you can lay out a bunch of first aid items and just ask your scouts, if you ran across somebody that had a cut or a scrape, how would you treat for them? Or how would you treat for those cuts and scrapes? And this is where scouts could have a lot of fun with this. I would definitely get their parents involved and ask them, well, if mom and dad had a cut or a scrape, how would you treat for them? How would you treat those cuts and scrapes? And you can just imagine how much fun they could have just trying to figure out what to do. Bites and stings. This is also an important topic that you should go over, because as we start going out into the outdoors and doing a lot more outdoor activities, you may get a couple of Cub Scouts that get stung by bees. They should know how to remove a stinger, and you should know how to do it too. Typically, you take a card like a credit card or your fingernail and try to scrape the stinger off. Apply some ice to reduce the swelling. And if there is a severe allergic reaction, you do have to call 911 and get that person to to get treated medically. Again, some other activities that you could create is basically little scenarios centered around bee stings. You can have one person dress up as a bee and run around trying to sting someone, and then ask the scouts how you would treat for a bee sting. Ticks. This is also a very important topic because, again, as you start doing more outdoor activities, as it gets hotter, and I don't know if you're doing any pack campouts yet, you should show your Cub Scouts what ticks look like. A tick is a parasite that fastens themselves to the skin and it feeds off of blood. You should definitely try to remove a tick as soon as possible because it does transmit diseases. You don't twist the head, you pull it out with tweezers as close to the head as possible, and then wash the area with soap and water. You should try to make sure to keep your scouts calm and show them pictures of what ticks look like, because if they freak out and you start freaking out, it doesn't really help anyone. When my daughter was little, about 4 years old, I found a tick on her neck, and guess what I did? I freaked out and she freaked out. I yanked the tick out and that was that. But looking back, maybe I should have stayed calm and tried to remove the tick in a calm manner. You should definitely tell your scouts, where they live, where they can find ticks and what to do, and get the parents involved in these activities that you create. You can create little skits and activities centered around ticks, because you have to make sure the parents know what ticks look like and how to treat for them, because they're the ones that really need to stay calm if they do encounter a tick on their body or their kids' bodies. And then I mentioned poisonous plants because, again, as you venture outdoors, you will run across some of these plants, in particular, poison oak. This is very common here in California. What you can do for this activity, you can print out pictures of what these poisonous plants look like, and you can play the plant game. And you can ask them, who can identify this plant? This is our friend poison oak. We don't encounter this plant that much, but this is poison ivy. And a little rhyme that I've always kept in the back of my head is leaves of 3, let them be. If it's shiny, watch your hiney, because you might get a rash from these plants. This one's not so common here in California, but this is poison sumac, and you can identify these plants by the berries that are attached to them. What do you do if you do encounter some of these plants and you rub your hands against them? Well, you have to wash the irritated area, apply calamine lotion, and take some oral antihistamines if needed. Apply a cold compress for 15 to 30 minutes. Don't scratch, and make sure that you wash all the clothing and items that have come in contact with these poisonous plants. This is especially important with little kids because they love to touch lots of things. So you don't want a whole pack covered in poison ivy or poison oak. The next topic I'd like to discuss is bloody noses. This is very common with young children. What causes bloody noses? Basically the dry air and nose picking. The way you treat for bloody noses is basically have the person lean forward, pinch the bridge of the nose for about 10 to 15 minutes, and have them lean forward, not back, because then all the blood would drain back into the throat. And again, you should try to keep your Cub Scouts calm so they don't, freak out over the sight of blood, and eventually it should stop bleeding. Along the lines of bloody noses, you should discuss dehydration. Children love to play, they're running around, but they forget to drink water. So you want to make sure they drink plenty of water and stay hydrated. Some signs of dehydration are dry mouth, muscle cramps, weakness, and a lack of sweating and dizziness. So you as Cub Masters have to kind of keep your eyes vigilant and make sure that children are drinking plenty of water when they're outdoors and even during den meetings. I like to show this chart. This is the urine color chart because some children, as I said, they forget to drink water. So you need to make sure that you show them this, and it may be kind of funny to them, but if your urine is nice and clear, that means that you are well hydrated. If it's nice and brown, it means you need to start drinking some water. Make sure that they drink plenty of water to stay hydrated. If they're not, keep them in cool places, try to calm them down, and then just apply cool, cold cloth or ice pack to reduce their body temperature if they do appear to be dehydrated. Some children don't like to drink water, but they should have a water bottle as part of their 10 essentials. You should try to encourage them to eat food that have a lot of water in them, like cucumbers and watermelons. So that's one little trick that you can use to make sure that all your scouts are hydrated. Fractures. I talk about fractures because we've had a few issues, a few Cub Scouts and even adults that have had some broken bones in our pack. So a fracture is basically a broken bone. It occurs when you fall from sports or other accidents. They can be open, they can be closed, they can be displaced and non-displaced. Hopefully you don't deal with a lot of these major big open fractures, but you do need to know about them, because if there is a child or an adult that has a fracture, then you need to know what to do, how to stabilize the person, how to stabilize them until you can get them to a hospital or the proper medical attention that they need. We had one adult that went on a pack hike who did not have proper shoes. There was loose gravel and she slipped down the trail. She broke her ankle. Luckily, we weren't that far off from the ranger station, and we were able to get her out of the campsite and out to the hospital to get treated. So you just need to be aware of these things and make sure that you know how to stabilize the person until you get them the proper help that they need. So this video is a short video on how to treat for different types of fractures here.
A break or crack in a bone is called a fracture. A broken bone that does not puncture the skin is called a closed fracture. But sometimes a bone can puncture the skin. This is called an open fracture. Even if you can't see any blood, the break will have caused some internal bleeding, and the injured person may develop shock. Bones that are still growing, like children's bones, are supple and can split, crack, or bend quite easily, a bit like a twig, but the injury is still very painful. If you think someone has a fracture, you may see swelling and bruising. They may have difficulty moving and have movement in an unnatural direction. The limb may look shorter, twisted, or bent. There may be a grating noise or feeling if the limb is moved, have loss of strength, or see signs of shock. If you think you've broken a bone, support the injured part to stop it from moving. This should help ease the pain and prevent any further damage. Place padding around the injury for extra support. If it's an open fracture, cover the wound with a sterile dressing and secure it with a bandage. Apply pressure around the wound and not over the protruding bone to control any bleeding. Call 999 or 112 for emergency help. While you're waiting for help to arrive, don't move the casualty unless they're in immediate danger. Support the injured area. For example, fractures on the arm can be secured against the body with a sling. fracture to the leg can be secured to the uninjured leg with a triangular bandage. Keep checking the person for signs of shock, but do not raise an injured leg. If necessary, raise the uninjured leg. If they become unresponsive at any point, prepare to treat an unresponsive casualty. So remember, pad and support the injured area, use a sling or triangular bandage to keep it secure, cover any wounds, call 999 or 112. And that's how you treat someone with a fracture. If this video has been helpful to you,
Okay, so that's a short video on how to treat for fractures. And again, it's useful to know not only for yourselves, but also you can, do an activity around fractures with your Cub Scouts, and they can learn how to treat for broken bones. And the reason I mention this is because we have had some Scouts in our pack that have had broken bones, broken injuries, broken ankles and arms. So it is important to know a little bit about how to stabilize these injuries. Let's see if I can get out of this now. No, it doesn't. Okay, there it is. Okay, so again, you can create activities around treating fractures. You can have Cubs practice splinting fractures. They can use splints that are made from cardboard, hiking poles, or sticks. And again, you can have their parents participate in these activities to help them understand how to stabilize broken bones. Head injuries is also a common injury that that you may encounter with children. It's a broad term referring to injuries of the skull, the scalp, the skull, and the brain. They can be mild or severe. A mild injury can be a bump, a scrape, or a superficial cut. Or they can be more severe. They can be concussions, a deep cut, a broken bone, and you may have some internal bleeding or brain damage. For mild injuries, those can be easily treated, but more severe injuries, those need medical treatment. You need to rush them out for medical emergencies. With severe head injuries, some symptoms that you may see is a loss of consciousness, vomiting, confusion, seizures, and worsening headaches. Treating for head injuries, with mild injuries, that you can basically apply ice to the injured area to reduce the swelling and rest. More severe head injuries, you call 911 and get the person to the nearest hospital. You can create activities centered around head injuries so that your Scouts can gain a better understanding of how to treat for head injuries. Any head injury you should really pay attention to, because you just don't know how severe the injury can be. Definitely have the Scout sit down, take a breath, and just monitor them for just a few minutes to make sure everything is a-okay. So then as your Cubs advance in rank, you get to the first responder adventure, which is a Webelos adventure. And this is where you really start to teach your Scouts about how to deal with emergencies. It teaches them to be prepared for emergencies. Now, there are 8 requirements in this adventure. Cub Scouts are only required to complete 6 of these requirements. I'm not going to click on this web link here because it'll kick me out of my presentation, but it is basically the worksheet for the first responder requirement or adventure in the Webelos rank. And it basically takes you step by step on how to go through this adventure, and it asks you the requirement questions. And that's just a good, nice little resource that you could have for your Cub Scouts. Basically, as I said, it teaches them how to respond to emergencies. It takes them through each step. It asks them to check the scene for safety before trying to help anyone. It talks about staying calm and think before you do anything. It talks about how to call 911 if someone is badly injured or needs help, and how to take care of the victim until help arrives. It goes through the 3 C's, which is basically check the scene to make sure everything is safe before you help, how to call 911 if there are real emergencies that need medical intervention, and how to care for the victim until medical aid arrives. These are nice little worksheets that you can create or get off of the internet. I like them because it asks them very specifically what to do when you're calling 911. Who are you? Give your name and your phone number. What happened? What is the situation? Is there a fire? Is there a car accident? How many people are hurt? And where are you? It asks them, to give an exact location if possible, street name or cross streets. You should really focus on showing kids how to call 911 because there may be situations where they're all alone and there is no adult to help them. So it's a good idea to get a general understanding of how to call 911 and what to do in those situations. It also describes what hurry cases are. Hurry cases are situations where there's serious bleeding, there's a heart attack, someone stopped breathing, someone's had a stroke, or poisoning. And it also explains the difference between a hurry case and a not so urgent situation. A sprained ankle is not a hurry case, but a heart attack is. It also describes CPR. CPR is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and you usually do this when someone is unresponsive and they have stopped breathing. I do encourage you all to take a CPR class to be CPR certified because, as I said, while these children are in your care, you are responsible for them, irregardless of whatever profession you're in. When we put on these uniforms, we suddenly become advisors, we become teachers, and we become caregivers. So you really have to be prepared for basically anything. CPR dummies are mannequins that you can use to practice CPR with, and you can purchase these items online, although they can be pretty expensive, or you can find them at out here we have the RAF store. I think our Cub Scout master found a few that were like $5 each. So if you can find a deal like that, then I think that's a great item to purchase, and you can show your Cub Scouts what to do in terms of CPR and how that practice is used to revive someone that's stopped breathing. Severe bleeding is also a topic that's discussed in this adventure. It talks about how to stop bleeding, how to apply compression with gauze padding, and basically what to do in these situations. You don't take the initial gauze off. If there is still a lot of bleeding, you just leave it on and apply more padding and try to dress the wound as best as possible. Choking, this is also an important topic. If a person is choking on food or some object in their throat, you need to know what to do. It's basically blocking their airway, and this can lead to the person being unconscious or maybe death. The universal sign for choking is your hands around your neck. And as you can see in this picture, this gentleman is trying to push on the diaphragm to expel the item that is stuck in this person's throat. If a person can still speak, cough, or breathe, you should encourage them to cough up whatever's in their throat. And if not, then definitely call 911. You can practice the Heimlich maneuver. And during COVID, I do realize that people don't want to get too close to each other. So again, my stuffed animal friends are great items that you can use to try to show how to perform the Heimlich maneuver, which is basically placing your hand or your fist in the just above the belly button and pushing upward and in to try to expel the item that is stuck in the person's throat. And this again is another example of what you could do with, if you're allowed to have two scouts to demonstrate how to perform abdominal thrusts on each other. It also speaks about emergency readiness plans, and this is what to do in case of an emergency, whether you have to get out of your home or to leave the den meeting place. This is a great activity to have your scouts do and just try, kind of draw out an escape plan in case there is a fire or a flood in their homes. This is something that they should be doing just in case they do have to evacuate for any kind of emergency. And these are great little scavenger hunts that you can have your scouts do. You can hide certain items around your den meeting location, or you can do this activity outside and have them go looking for these items. These are all items that you would put in an emergency kit. And again, always just make sure that you make it fun and have some prize at the end of this little game. And part of the Weeblos first responders also to go visit one of your first responders, go talk to them about what they do for their job and how they respond to emergencies, whether it's a fire or medical emergency. And that's really the end of my presentation. As adult leaders, like I said, I really encourage you to take a first aid class, a CPR class, and a wilderness first aid class. Because again, these little guys are in our care. We should really be prepared for just about anything, but try to provide a nice, safe environment and a fun environment for them. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Otherwise, have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol, I have a small question for you.
Yes, go ahead.
I made note that you made those super cute first aid neckerchief slides.
Mhm.
How did you put the hole in it to get the
That's a good question. I don't remember. I think we kind of like cut the hole in the back of it, and then put the little pipe cleaner through it. I think there was also one where they like hot glued a clip to the back of the film canister also. So those are some options. But I think we still have them laying around the house, but they're really cute. They still have the Band-Aids in there and all the ointment. So, and the kids loved it because it's something neat that they can put around their neckerchiefs. So
yeah, I like that a lot. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Oh yeah. Drill holes, true. You can drill holes in
Yeah,
it.
good. You just try not to break the actual canister.
Yeah. I appreciate your presentation. Thank you for it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Sure. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
All right.
Focus on making sure. Great. Thank you.